Yeah, everything went super quick. As soon as we opened up the classroom to sell everything, it went so fast. We're probably good.
Everything, was everything more price?
I don't even think I got that far with it. I went back there to clear the classroom out and bring everything out. I think all the equipment was sold within a couple days. It was just crazy.
I thought about he who hesitates is lost.
You know, I mean, like.
Are we good? Are we live now?
We are.
We are live. Well, welcome to Woodcraft. Thanks for coming down for our first Saturday demo in some time now, our first one since we've reopened. I'm Mark. Hopefully you can hear me through the mask and the noise in here. We're going to be talking today about differences between water-based finish and oil-based finish, and then kind of get on a little bit about application with brushes and spray equipment. If you guys have questions anytime, just raise your hand, let me know, and I'll try and answer them as we go along here. One of the big things people ask me when they come in, what should I use? Should I use water-based or should I use oil-based? And it's really preference. If you're looking for durability, they're both pretty close to being the same now as far as durability goes. Water-based finishes, when I started using them about 15 years ago, were not very good. They went on okay, they looked all right, but they were soft. They weren't very resistant to chemicals or water or anything like that. But boy, have they improved over the years. So much so that the majority of the big projects that I do, I'm a luthier, a guitar maker by trade. I use water-based finish on pretty much all that stuff now. The water-based finishes are very durable now, very water and chemical resistant, very scratch resistant. You will find that as far as on that durability side of things go, that the oil-based finishes have a tendency to dent, where a water-based finish will dent and or crack. So that's really the big difference when it comes to that part of it. The other part of it is going to be, what do you want your project to look like? Oil-based finishes have an amber or a yellow cast to them, and so they impart a warmth to the wood. If you took a water-based finish, they don't have that in it, typically. There are some that do, some that emulate a solvent-based or oil-based finish pretty darn well. But as far as this goes, this General Finish High Performance, it is water clear. It would be like taking a piece of wood and taking a piece of acrylic and laying it on top. It protects it a lot, but it doesn't really bring out the natural glow, the color, or grain of the wood. I'll talk about how to change that here in a minute. So along those lines, as far as that goes, what do you want your project to look like in the end? If you don't like to do a whole lot of extra work, the oil-based finishes are really easy to apply. They do take a bit longer to dry. We're talking, maybe 6 to 8 hours, depending on temperature and humidity. So you may only get about a coat per day on a project. Whereas the water-based finishes, they dry a lot quicker. I typically see about an hour, maybe 2, depending on temperature and humidity, and therefore you can get a lot more coats on in a day, so get further on your project. I remember where I was here. So oil-based, it's going to have that amber hue to it if that's kind of what you're looking for. There are times that maybe you're using white pine or maple or even holly, whether it be as an accent or as the main project, where you want to keep it that really white or blonde color. And that's where using a water base like the high performance here will keep that without changing the color. So if you don't want your maple to turn more yellow, you can use the water base and keep it that more blonde, which is really, really nice. I recall a few years ago that a customer came in with a project that was made out of laminated birch plywood, and it was kind of a blue color, and he didn't want it, or he was doing a finish on there that somebody else gave him, recommended, and it was turning it green, and he wanted it to stay blue. I said, boy, I've got the product for you, and that was the General Finish High Performance. It goes on, it is, you know, a waterborne finish. It kind of looked wet to begin with, but I said, just wait, once it dries, it was like nothing was on there other than have some sheen and protection. So if you don't want to change your color, great way to go here. Okay.
That one's 10%.
Because, you know, I try and share a lot of people to go towards the water base because it is so quick to do. It's fairly easy to do and forgiving. If you want to get that kind of oil-based look out of it, to get that amber kind of hue, there's a couple things you can do. One of them, and what I always do, is put a coat of de-waxed shellac. That has a little bit of amber hue to it, brings out the color in the wood, brings out the grain, and then use this as your top coat. You can also add amber dye into this finish. I use trans tint. You can use the General Finishes water-based dye stains. They can mix right in there. There's a color in that. And that will also add that kind of color and warmth to your product as well. Okay. Talk about that. As far as cleanup goes, water base, you're pretty much just water. If you need soap and water, warm soap or warm water and soap, whether you're using brushes or spray equipment, that's all you need to clean up this stuff. Oil base, of course, you need typically mineral spirits to clean your brushes and your spray equipment. And all that stuff needs to be taken care of properly. Rags need to be dry before thrown away or kept in a metal, non-flammable container with water. You know, you want to really make sure you clean your brushes out really well between use. And so it works great. I've used them both quite a bit. I do like both. It's really just a matter of what you want your final product to be and maybe what it's gonna be. I've done a lot of furniture with Armor Seal because it is so easy to do and very durable. I've got a couch and some chairs that I did a number of years ago. I have 3 kids, animals, and they still look pretty darn good other than being a little beat up. So it kind of depends on, at that point, what kind of protection you want. I feel that, well, on my instruments, the water-based finish, it's a film building finish, so it really builds up on the surface and gives you a lot of protection between the wood and touching it. And this will do it as well. It doesn't build as fast. The oil-based finish does not build as fast, but can work in that instance. Questions before we move on to any sort of application here? Yes, sir.
Yeah, food safe, if you make bowls, salad bowls, stuff like
Food
that.
safe, that is a very good question. Neither of these products necessarily say that they are food safe. There are some oil-based products that are food safe. General Finishes makes one called Salad Bowl Finish. Unfortunately, I don't have any at the moment. We should be getting some more back in. A lot of finishes become inert when they are cured, but like the high performance here, I wouldn't put this on something that's going to have any sort of cutting on there, like a cutting board, because it's going to chip up, it's not going to look good, you don't want to ingest that kind of stuff. So I would go towards the cutting board finish or the salad bowl finish on there.
And you get more of
If you
those
were doing a bowl, let's say, that's just going to have candy or nuts or something in there, this would probably be okay. You know, it's kind of an indirect food contact kind of deal. Would probably be fine.
Okay.
Other questions? Do we have any questions from Facebook yet?
Not as of yet.
Not as of yet. Well, you guys are welcome there on Facebook that are watching to write a question or comment, and girls behind the camera to relay that to me if necessary. Did you have another question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
These all work well with stain.
Oh, staining with these.
Pre-staining, yeah.
Yeah, so when it comes to staining, You can either use a water-based or oil-based stain. I get the question quite often, what's the difference? Honestly, pick the color that you want. If you see a color in the water-based stain and you want to use an oil-based finish, perfectly fine. If you see a stain in the oil-based stains that you really like and you want to use a water-based finish, that is perfectly fine. The rule of thumb though is if you're going to use an oil-based stain with a water-based finish, your oil-based stain needs to be dry for about 3 days before you put the water-based top coat on there. Is your question, Joel?
Yeah. Jack asks, if you want to paint a project, should you apply any kind of base coat other than primer, and what kind of top coat can you put over paints?
Oh boy, that is a good question. Maybe one that I'm not super familiar with. As far as the paints that we carry here in the store, the General Finishes milk paints, and also the old-fashioned milk paints. I don't believe you are required to use primer with either of those, although you probably can. And as far as top coats go, both of those you would be fine with the General Finish High Performance or another water-based top coat should be fine over the top of the milk and acrylic paints. I hope that answers your question.
Is there a milk paint that actually will amber if you put a top coat on it?
Oh, that's a good question as well. So will a milk paint amber if you put a top coat over it? So as it turns out, that although these high performances are water clear, over white paint, like the white milk paint, you will actually get a pink hue through it with these over there. It is some odd chemical reaction. It may happen with darker colors, but it's not noticeable as it is with white. So General Finishes has actually addressed that and do a white poly top coat to go over a white paint. That was a great question.
Quinn asks, which water or oil will give you a better depth of look?
Which one will give you better depth of look? So straight, if we're talking apples to apples here, straight out of the can, the oil base out of the can is going to give you a better depth than the water base. This specific water base, okay? Because this is water clear, this has an amber hue to it. If you want to make this look like that, again, you can add amber tint into this and also do a shellac base coat under it. And that will give you a lot of depth. There is another product from General Finishes. It's called EnduroVar. It actually has an amber hue to it already and does a really good job emulating a solvent or oil-based finish. Come see me before you try to use the EnduroVar. It has some special applications. So I hope that will answer that question. Other questions before we move on? All right, so as far as application goes, there's kind of, I'm going to cover two and I might kind of talk about a third. The third one is wiping on, okay? A lot of people get out there and they get the wipe on polys, okay? That's typically an oil base. A lot of times this armor seal, I wipe it on. Because my method for applying this is put it on the surface, let it soak in, and then wipe off the excess. So a lot of times I'm using a good rag with this. You can also, on larger projects, use a brush with the oil base. A good natural bristle or China bristle brush works really great for oil-based finishes. Again, for me, it's really just a means of getting the oil onto the surface so it can soak in a bit and wipe off the excess. Not recommended on either product here to use foam brushes, at least from my experience. I have tried using foam brushes with the water-based finishes and they leave bubbles. These are great for stains, not really great for a good top coat. So unfortunately, I don't recommend those, even though it may say on the can that you can. You could, but you're going to have a lot of bubbles. Brushes for water-based, a good synthetic brush, like this one, this polyester one from Red Tree, This would be great for waterborne finishes. Okay, nice and fine, flows off there really, really great. Now, as far as that goes, brushing with the oil base, since they dry so slow, works pretty darn well. So if you're going to do your final top coat, you don't want to be wiping anything off. You can do, as long as you're really careful, you can do a nice brushed on coat on there and then just let it be. Bubbles typically have a lot of time with that to come up and pop, so you shouldn't have any problems there. Water base, if you're going to brush, and then, this is a pretty effective and inexpensive means to apply finish as a brusher. The one thing you got to know about water base is because it dries so fast, you don't want to be fooling around with it. You want to put it on a nice wet coat and walk away. If you start trying to brush, you see a spot that doesn't look right, you want to brush it out, you're going to inadvertently leave streaks. Been there, done that. Just brush on a wet coat, walk away. Okay. So when applying with the brush, you have a tendency to actually do a kind of a heavy finish on there. So you may have to break up your project into several sections. So if you're doing, a box, maybe you're going to do the top of the box. You're going to wait till that's dry, and then turn it and do the next section. And that's just to help avoid runs. Okay, we don't want runs. Their runs are a problem. They're a pain to get out. Okay, nobody likes that. On the alternative, it is a bit more expensive to get into, but you can do spraying. Because waterborne finishes dry so fast, I like to spray them. I can get a much more even coat, not worry about streaks. It does take some practice and time to learn so that you don't put too much on and have runs. But spraying works really, really well with water base. I have never sprayed oil base. I know some people that have. I would only recommend that really for larger projects where you're not going to be trying to hand rub a giant couch or a kitchen table or something. So you can spray it. Just note that at the end of the day, clean your spray equipment. And I will recommend that for any type of finish you do. Clean your spray equipment. Now, waterborne, if you happen to leave it in your gun, forget about it, come back the next day, you're probably going to be okay. Pour it out, clean it out, you should be fine. If you did that with an oil base, your gun is gummed up and it's going to take some time to clean and or replace parts in order to get it functioning again. So as far as spraying with the water base, there's a couple options. One is a conversion gun for an air compressor. You do need a sizable compressor to run one of these. The little pancake ones are typically not, don't have enough CFM or capacity in order to effectively use one of these on a, not this size, not a full size gun. A mini gun might work for smaller projects, but this one, you're going to pull the trigger and 10 seconds later it's going to run. You got to wait for it to charge up again. So pretty good size, I would say 60 gallon or larger air compressor would work for this really, really well. And then there is a spray station. This is the Erlex 5500. This is fantastic, easy to use, easy to clean. I have actually used this with this product with the high performance and had fantastic results with it. Although spraying does take some one setup, okay, you got to make sure you have the right needle set up for the finish that you're spraying. It does take technique, and that's just practice, so you're not too heavy-handed in one spot and too light in another. And your product that you're spraying, viscosities, something that typically you might have a manual with your sprayer that might give you a viscosity chart for said product. A lot of times on the back of the can they'll give you recommendations for a needle and valve setup and fitting your product. If it's not on the can, contact the manufacturer, okay? And they can typically give you good recommendations for what you need to spray. And then if you don't have a good chart, keeping a record of said combinations is really, really good. So the next time you come, you're not guessing. You know exactly what you need to set up and how to thin your product in order to get a good spray. Any other questions? Do we have any on Facebook there? Nope.
No more questions?
And you can come see me afterwards. You know, don't be shy. Thank you for coming out today. Thanks for everybody tuned in on Facebook. And hopefully we'll see you again soon.
One more quick question.
Yes, go ahead.
In between coats, what do you suggest you sand with on projects that need multiple coats?
Okay, so yeah, sanding between coats. That's really kind of a loaded question. So when I'm applying finish, let's say to a guitar, my big thing is getting enough finish on there that I can sand that finish flat, have a good flat surface that I can build up more finish on, and then have enough finish on there to polish. So I typically don't sand between coats unless I have bubbles or a bug or a hair or some sort of something that's settled into the finish. And if that happens, I typically use 320 grit paper.
320.
320. Armor seal, you could do the same exact thing with, you know, because it is slower drying, the odds of something settling into it in between coats are pretty high. So 320 grit paper or 4/0 steel wool or a synthetic 4/0 steel wool work really, really great for that as well.
One more question from Facebook.
One more question, and then we'll get to you, Robert.
It is first.
Go ahead.
What you mentioned a polish after you finish dries. What do you polish you recommend?
Okay, polishing after the finish and I'm gonna switch that from drying to curing. Dry time again on the water-based finishes is an hour or two. On the oil base, you're at 6 to 8 hours. A full cure is something different. Water-based finish in dry, 70 degrees and dry, will take about 2 weeks. And on the oil-based finish, 2 weeks plus, depending on how thick the finish is. And I'm only mentioning that because if it is not 100% cured, you're never going to get a good polish out of it. The finish is not hard enough to accept the polish. And that is kind of a lengthy process where I wet sand from 400 grit up to, I have been doing 2000. I got some new equipment, so I'm only needing to go up to about 1200 grit. And then I go through 3 different buffing compounds on with 2 different types of wheels. So actually I have 3 sets of wheels, so 2 different types of wheels on a buffing arbor. And by the time I'm done with that, I have a very high gloss finish.
What's the polish you use though?
Those, they're similar to an automotive polish. Mazurna, I think, was a brand. I have since switched over to a brand that was formulated for instruments. It's not as aggressive because it's more formulated for an instrument finish than it is for a car finish. And they are made by a company called StuMac. Here in the store we have primarily for wood turners, but it would work on any wood project, is the Beal system, and they have a couple of compounds and a wax and wheels that would mount onto a lathe in order to buff.
Because I noticed everything you got over there got petroleum destroys in it, and I know it destroys a finish because I've learned the hard way.
Yeah, you got to be careful when buffing with power equipment. You can burn through a finish real quick. Low speed is the key. There's other ways you can polish out a finish. The micro mesh system, wet sanding with that. By the time you get up through the highest grit on there, you have a pretty darn glossy finish. So yeah, there's a few different ways. Whole huge subject that I can go on for a long time about. And we have another question on Facebook.
Yeah, it's a 2-part question. One, is a shellac considered an oil or something separate? And the second question is, Our viewer wants to know, once they use these products, what is the best way to care for it? A wax finish on top of pledge?
Okay, so the first part, the shellac is actually a solvent-based finish. It's a natural resin secreted from a bug. It is then processed. Typically what we find here are flakes or pre-mixed shellac, and they're typically de-waxed, so they take the natural waxes out of them. And shellac's fantastic. It sticks to about anything, and just about anything will stick to it. It's a great sanding sealer. You could use it as an actual finish itself, although it doesn't like alcohol. It's not super durable, but it's very easy to apply. It's very easy to repair, and it's been a traditional finish for a really long time. And what was the second part of the question, Joel?
What do you use to take care, pledge or like a wax of some sort?
That kind of depends on the finish. If I was using a water-based finish, if you can get away with like a microfiber cloth to clean it, that would be perfect. Or some soap and water to clean that off. An oil-based finish, you could wax it to kind of liven it back up again. You could use pledge or some other furniture cleaning spray would be okay with the oil-based finish. Any other questions today? Excellent. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thanks for everybody that tuned in. Robert, you have one more question?
Yeah, do you consider denatured alcohol a solvent?
Yes, denatured alcohol is a solvent.
Okay.
Yep, sure is.
So that's what shellac is cut with.
Yeah, shellac, yeah. Denatured alcohol is what you use to dissolve the shellac flakes. You can also use it to thin the pre-mixed stuff as well.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome, guys. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Facebook. Thank you for our successful first time doing Facebook Live. Have a great weekend.